Hello, you are tuned to Grecian Echoes, Mondays with Meleti.
This is Chris Zannetos.
Hello, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for calling in. How are
How are
you?
you? My
Wonderful.
my
Thank
apologies for being a couple of minutes late. It's become a factor of my life, unfortunately, but I do apologize.
we appreciate you taking the time to come on the air and speak with our listeners. I know that you were on with Ted Dimitriadis, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you had just pretty much started your campaign, I think, then. Is that right?
That's correct. That's
Wow.
correct.
So how has it been going?
It's been going great. Unfortunately, we can't go out and meet with a lot of people. Um, as we would in the pre-COVID days.
Yeah.
But I'm still getting out and meeting people, and certainly talking to a lot of people on the phone and through Zoom. And honestly, that's for me by far the best part of this is just hearing what people are concerned about, what their hopes are, and a lot of how they're pulling together and their communities are pulling together to respond to the pandemic, and that's very heartening to me. And I think that's something we're going to continue to drive to really pull our communities together because we're just so much stronger together than we are apart.
Yes, that's for sure. And just to remind our listeners, we're speaking with Chris Zannetos, who is running for the congressional seat in the House of Representatives. And, in District 4, which is a very historical, well, I guess a Democratic, for many, many years, it's been a Democratic district, but in fact has a large percentage of independent voters. Am I right there?
It is actually there is a majority of registered independent voters.
Hmm.
Definitely a reliably Democratic district, voted very heavily Democratic in the past elections, and we expect moving forward. But definitely people who go and they look heavily at the person and want to make sure that they are, their views are consistent with their values, but really take a close look at the person with the right experience, the right skills to actually do the job.
Yes, absolutely. And just so for a lot of people that don't know, the fourth district is what's the area that it covers?
Uh, the fourth the fourth district is a really interesting district. We've got a lot of different towns and diversity in the district. We run from Hopkinton in the west to Brookline and then down to Fall River.
Ooh, it is a big and diverse area, and in fact,
It
it's an area that's in our WNTN is it's in our broadcast area, a good part of it anyway. So I hope that a lot of people are listening in. Yeah,
as do I.
yeah. So tell us, have you been in any debates yet? I think there was something that was announced that maybe on public radio about a week or so ago. Am I mistaken? Have there been any debates
So
or
there,
just?
so organizations are beginning to set up debates. There really haven't been. I think there was one very early on before I came into the race. So they're beginning to set those up. There's so much, Meleti, that is consuming people's time and their minds, and rightly so. Right, with the health crisis part of the pandemic, with the economic crisis part of the pandemic, with we've got our presidential race, et cetera. So there are a lot of things that, and of course, for those with children, dealing with how they can access their schooling from home, and with the parents still trying to get their work done. So I think there's so much that have taken people's time. People are just beginning to sort of pull their heads up and take a look at what's going on for the congressional seat.
Yeah, there is a lot going on. It's an important race. So tell us about your platform. What are you proposing in your candidacy?
Sure. So I agree with you, Meleti, that it is a very important race. I think if you talk to any observers, they'll say that they expect a Democrat will eventually be elected. And I think it's really important that we send a person down to Washington who can actually drive change. There are so many issues that we face, and we seem to be in one crisis after another. And in the end, I think we need to send people down there who understand the forces that are changing our society, that are creating many of these things. I mean, certainly, we deal with obstacles for people to be able to build a better life for their families that have been with us for centuries. And finally, we're seeing people rise up, I hope, to drive some significant change around racial prejudice in our society and how that prevents people from achieving the American dream, which so many in our community, it's a very important thing for us because our families have lived it. But so many people have obstacles preventing them from being able to achieve that. But there are many other obstacles, many created by this change in our society over the past 20 years. The technology and information age has created obstacles of its own. And I think we need people down there, especially as we try to dig out of this economic hole that we're in, who understand the new economy, who have created jobs in the new economy, understand the technology that's driving it. Because actually, I was very surprised to find out there are only 6 people in Congress who have any significant experience with the technologies that are driving our economy and our growth right now.
Oh.
And to me, that's just an absurdly low number. Even fewer who actually know how to create jobs in this environment, fewer who've been working with education to create new paths for people to get to it without having to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And those are the sort of things that I've been doing in my career as an entrepreneur and as a person who's been focused on creative educational approaches to access the American dream.
Yes, tell us about that. Tell us about your background in technology, because I understand you were in the cybersecurity field.
I am. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've started 3 technology companies over the years. Been very fortunate, worked with great people together. We've created hundreds of jobs for people in Massachusetts, ultimately over $250 million of salary for people. And the last 2 companies have been cybersecurity companies focused on first how to protect companies, but my most recent one, Covered Security, is about how to protect people, how we can actually change how we behave online to reduce the likelihood that someone is going to hack us and steal our money and waste our time. And, the issues around cybersecurity are certainly extremely important. That's sort of the 21st century battlefield relative to, how countries attack us and attack our election process as well as our companies and our government.
Right.
And, I would go down to Congress and brief people on this periodically, and, it's clear that it would be great to get more experience of that down there as well.
There is something to be said for being able to negotiate those things in Congress, too. It's been so divided there, it seems. So being able to reach across the aisle or to get understanding with people and get behind bills and proposals is an important part of the job, because a lot of times you won't be speaking with just Democrats. They're going to shake their head and say, yes, yes, yes. You're going to have some challenges to bring some other people on board to. And it seems like this kind of background is a really important thing to be able to negotiate that.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, that's one of the major reasons that I decided to step back from my company and run for Congress, is that, one of the things that has been so disheartening for me is looking at the dysfunction of Congress, the fact that it is hyper-partisan, that they cannot really pull themselves together to act unless we're in an absolutely once-in-a-lifetime crisis like we were with the pandemic, and thankfully they did pull together for that.
Right.
But I just I can't stand the thought of my children and their generation inheriting this dysfunctional government from my generation. And that really compels me to run for this. Not something that I plan to do, but I really feel that I must do it. In part because as an entrepreneur, one of the things that we focus on and that we have to be able to do to succeed is, I call it make 1 + 1 = 3. We are trained to pull people together, even people who don't agree on things, pull them together to solve tough problems with creative solutions in a way that everybody wins. Right?
Yeah.
we have this crazy idea as entrepreneurs that we can create something that no one's ever created before, that delivers value to customers, to investors, to our staff and fellow workers, and to the community, to make the community better. And I think that's what we need to bring down to Washington, right? Working with people in the Democratic Party, and also across the aisle with Republicans who work with us to get good things done for the people in a way that delivers a win for everyone, not the sort of zero-sum game, win-lose approach that we see so often down in Washington.
Right. I think a lot of people are really disheartened and tune out to a certain degree for what's going on, and feel discouraged, and we're back to, I think for a lot of people, well, we ask if they vote. No, does it really matter? And it does matter. It really does matter. And we have to elect people who are going to bring about a goodness to fulfill the American dream. I like it when you said the American dream. It brought us back to, there were a nation of immigrants, and that our parents, our forefathers, had come from, in most cases, from outside of the U.S. and really built a great country. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Yeah, you
Sure.
grew up in Winchester, I believe.
I grew up in Winchester and Weston, I could go on and on about the American dream. Right, my father emigrated here from Cyprus with $100 in his pocket and a scholarship to a college that went out of business after his first semester, and yet through hard work and risk-taking and initiative and help from a lot of people in the community, he built this wonderful life along with my mother, who her father was an immigrant from the Azores. When we talk about the American dream, I feel like my family has lived that. I've had such good fortune to grow up in a family that has been able to succeed and enabled me to get great education, both in in some private schools, but also public schools. And I graduated from a public high school in my town to then go on to MIT for my undergraduate years. I feel like I was so fortunate to have that opportunity. And I look around, and as you said, so many people are sort of despondent now because they don't see that opportunity. And for us in our community, the Greek American community, this is central to our values in our common and shared experience. When you ask most people in our community, either their parents or their grandparents immigrated here and worked amazingly hard to build a great life for their families. And to know now that nearly 50% of Americans don't even believe in the American dream of being able to achieve a better life than your parents in the generations before, it's just horribly sad. And I think we have to change that.
Yeah, the income inequality that's in our system is, I think a lot of people will think, well, it seems like there's 98% or so of the people that have the majority of the wealth in the country, and everyone else sort of struggles with it. And when you mentioned your children now, you have, how many children do you have?
I have two children.
And they're
children.
Grown now? Grown up?
They're getting there. So my daughter has been out of college for 2 years now. She's out in the working world, works in educational equity, trying to make sure that everyone has the opportunity of a great education, regardless of their income level, regardless of the color of their skin. And, I'm really proud of her dedication to that mission. And my son just finished up with his electrical engineering degree from BU, and was planning on joining a company which unfortunately laid off an awful lot of their staff due to the economic crisis, and he's out on the hustings looking for his next opportunity.
Wow, you must be very proud of them. They both are doing so well. And you are a member of the church in St. Demetrius in Weston? And
I am.
You've been active in the church for many years, and since you were young, I believe, right?
I have. Actually, I So my family used to go to the Taxiarchy in Watertown. And I think Father Meletios was very unhappy when my parents moved and decided to attend the Weston Church, which was St. Demetrius, which was only about a mile from our house. He had me pegged for the altar, for being an altar boy. And so really from a very early age, I started going to St. Demetrius. I was an altar boy. I of course, went off to school, came back, got married in the church. My children were baptized there, and was on the board of administration for a couple of stints in some very interesting times, including when we were just beginning to try to figure out whether we could build a new church and rebuild our church.
Right.
And, very interesting, challenging discussions, but ultimately so energizing as the community came together, and we rebuilt a sanctuary into what it is today, which is just a beautiful sanctuary.
Yes. I have a lot of respect for you, and that from what you've told me now, you've raised a family, you went to school, and then started companies that were in partnerships with the community. And with all of that work, which I'm just trying to process it all, now to hear that you have served, on the board of the church, which is just very beautiful, So it's, I'm bravo, Sue. I'm very,
well,
very
thank
proud.
You. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you that I, of course, have not done all that alone, not just the companies with the great people who worked on this, but of course without I couldn't have done anything without my partner, my wife, who
yes,
deserves the lion's share credit for our children and how they've turned out, and who herself has been involved in the Philotos and many other parts of the church. So, I want to make sure that she gets the lion's share of the credit for all that.
Yes, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, we're speaking with Chris Zannetos. He is candidate for the congressional seat and the 4th District here in Massachusetts. His website is chrisz4ma.com. So it's spelled out Chris, CHRISZFORMA.com. And it's a great website. You can find more about what he's looking to do for us. And Chris, it's so nice again for you to be joining us. Tell us now. You started off talking about how difficult it was to hold political events now with the pandemic that we're in, and yet there are things going on in Zoom, and that there are a lot of meetings. Do you have anything coming up in terms of speaking engagements or anything that we should know about?
Sure, absolutely. We and this is a great timing. We actually have what we've been doing has been holding an awful lot of web meetings with people. At least we can see them. They can see me, ask questions. We do many every week, but one in particular would be important for our community, the Greek American community. We're actually holding a national get-together. For Greek Americans this coming Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30 on the web. We've got a great set of hosts. It's hosted by Philip Christopher, a fellow Cypriot American. Dimitri Neonakis, Nancy Agro-Savage, and many others are hosting this.
Oh, that's great. And they can find out about it through your website? Is that probably the best place, Chrissy? Or how can
I think we need to get it up there a little bit more effectively, but they can certainly find out about it by contacting one of my staff members, Kristen Baglaneas.
Okay.
At Kristen B for Baglaneas, CHRISTENB, at ZannetosForCongress.com.
Okay, so there's. Did I get your website wrong, Zannetos?
No, I'm a tech guy. There are many ways you can get to my website, but for those who aren't Greek or Hellenic in background, Zannetos, I'd have to do a commercial, if you ever remember that commercial for Paul Tsongas, for people trying to pronounce and spell the name.
Right.
So, we thought for most people Chris Z for MA would be better. But frankly, you can just go on the website there and click to ask a question or send an email to info, and we'll make sure that we get the information to you about this event on Thursday for National Greek Americans.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for joining me this morning and talking to our listeners and telling us about your platform. And I want to wish you a very best of luck in your campaign, and hope that to see you at either in person or in one of these speaking events that will be online. Chris Zannetos for Congress in the 4th District in Massachusetts. Important race this year. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And as I bike on my bike tour of the 4th District past your office, which I do often, I will try to stop by so we can at least say a physical hello.
That would be great. I'd really love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. You are tuned to Grecian Echoes, Mondays with Meleti, here on WNTN 1550 AM in Boston. Grecian Echoes, the longest-running Greek-American radio broadcast program in the country, 73 years and running. We want to thank Chris Zannetos, who has joined us by telephone to talk about his candidacy for the congressional seat in Massachusetts in the 4th District. It's a seat that's been was held by Joe Kennedy III, and before that, Barney Frank. And it's an important race this year. It really is. So do what you can to get involved.